Konnichiwa, y'all, and welcome to the 10 at 10 for October 1st of 2024. I'm Matt. I've got Kate here with me today.
Hey, so yeah, move over, Princess Peach. We have a new Japanese princess in town. This is an awesome pink dwarf that is off of Mikao Yatsubusa and introduced by Italian Book Colts.
That's funny to bring that up. My daughters are bugging me to go to Universal Studios in Japan because their Mario exhibit is better. So they have this Mario exhibit over there. They love Princess Peach. They're crazy about it. Japanese princess, an amazing plant with some cool colors, guys. Give this one more sunlight, you'll get more of that hot pink coloration. Giving it more shade, you'll get more of that kind of bleached out blonde look with some pink tones over top of it. I love this plant. It's probably one of the best overall Japanese maples ever. I think in our top 50 Talon Buckholz cultivar introductions, we rated it #1. So it is one of those quintessential Mikawa types, a little bit smaller than Mikawa, typically around 3 foot, even in 10 years. Think of it as something that grows a little bit more like tattoo size.
Yeah, and it's always nice to find a beautiful Japanese maple that's great for container gardening. And it's just so versatile because it also has such a nice bright red in the fall. So it's a beautiful maple throughout the year.
We're finding that older Japanese princesses will start to develop some cork bark characteristics to them too, which is quite unique. Grab you one today. They're a plant that goes quickly on the 10 at 10. You know, any of the Mikawa types tend to go pretty quick. It is a super fun one though. Japanese princess, always amazing. We recently shot a lot of content with Nakata-san, right? One of the cool things he told us is that the garden he developed was visited by the actual princess of Japan. My wife loves royalty, so she had to talk to him. This was all his daughter translated about once my wife found out that she'd had a visit from the actual princess of Japan. Super cool stuff though. Grab you a Japanese princess today. These won't last long. They do sell out quickly. All right, Kate, what do we have next?
So up next we have Aureum. It's this beautiful shirasawanum. It has a beautiful chartreuse color, but it also has some variation throughout the year. In the spring it has more of a green color, but then it has a beautiful orange, red fall color. So it's a really beautiful maple.
Classic Japanese maple. Found by Seabold in Japan, brought to Plantinium Esfeld there in Holland. We recently did a podcast with one of my all-time favorite maple people. So we video chatted with Cor van Gelderen of Esfeld. The original Acer shirasawanum is there on the banks at Esfeld Plantinium in Holland. The legend kind of goes that Seabold was this optometrist who sailed around a lot in Asia and found amazing plants. The story goes that he had taken this from Japan and sailed up on the banks of Esfeld, threw this Aureum out, and they planted it there where it landed. And I've seen this. It's a 200-year-old Aureum there, you know, at Esfeld Plantinium. Really crazy piece of maple history. Acer shirasawanum Aureum, all of them are grafts or clones from that one. An amazing yellow. Now what we suggest with this one, kind of finding a good spot for it in the garden. So put it in a container at first. You can kind of play around with it, find a sweet spot. I give it a lot of shade. I have one in a high oak canopy near my Ukigumo, and it looks outstanding.
And it's cool too because sometimes it has a little morning shade. It'll get a bit of a red border. So it's just a beautifully versatile plant, and it has such a cool history too.
Yeah, quintessential shirasawanum leaf, that big round leaf. I think you're going to love this one. If you don't have it already, great chance to pick it up, put it in the collection. Really just a fun overall plant. Acer shirasawanums are very durable. They're very cold tolerant. I do recommend late day shade typically for Aureum in most of your hotter places. Even some of your cooler places, you might not want to put this one in full late day sun, but just a showstopper for the color. There's really nothing quite like it. Now, Tim and I filmed at one here in Flat Rock. You have to go check out our Aureum breakdown where we show you some massive specimens of this, but just an all around great plant. All right, y'all, coming back to the 10 at 10, we've got Acer palmatum Beni Kawa.
Yeah, I love how just kind of open of a canopy, and they're fun to whip around too at this point. But, yeah, it's a beautiful coral bark, and it has great winter interest, that bright red color, which is really just so hard to find with deciduous plants.
One of our most popular coral barks, because it's in that mid-size range, typically at around 10 to 12 foot, you know, even in 15 years. It's a little smaller than Sangukaku. It's a little bigger than Little Sango. It kind of fits right in the medium for a lot of people. Great red bark interest in this. It's kind of a pink red color, which looks really nice in the fall and the winter as well. They'll be a little bit greener on the bark. So right now, once coming out of the greenhouse, you're gonna think, oh, they're super green. That's very common for the fall months. Getting them out in the landscape, they're gonna have much more bark interest. This has a perfect fall color too. Some golden yellow with red splashed into it. I think the fall color is really underrated.
Yeah, especially because there is that strong contrast with the red. It's just beautiful, especially as it matures and with the new growth. It's just beautiful to see throughout the year.
You'll see commonly used in Japanese maples Beni, meaning light red, and then Kawa, meaning bark. So it literally translates as red bark. It's a quintessential Japanese maple. I think one of the better coral barks. I'm a big fan of Beni Kawa. Holds the color really well. It's heat tolerant, can handle a good bit of sun. We're going to list these as zone 6 through zone 9, so not typically down to zone 5. They aren't cold hardy quite as much in zone 5. Zone 6 and up, they work great. Good drainage is the key. Can handle a ton of sunlight. They can handle sandier soils. We find that coral barks do great when they're not wet in the winter months. That really picks up the overall color and health of the plant and not be damp in the winter months. Great plant though. Grab you a Beni Kawa.
Yeah, I also just love how they have beautiful red flowers in the spring and then those turn to Samara. So every season has something cool.
Yeah, especially, it kind of picks up. You notice the red flowers on this one a lot. It's a good point because of that green foliage, but also the kind of pink bark. You kind of start to catch the flower on that one. Beautiful plant, y'all. All right, y'all, so next up we got Picea pungens, ruby teardrops.
Yeah, so this is a beautiful blue Colorado spruce. It has a really nice globe shape that it gets as it matures. And what I think is really nice about it is it has these really cool red cones that kind of come out more towards the early winter, and they can stay up to 2 months if it gets some good shade. So they're really beautiful contrasting.
Great contrast with that blue-green color. Really a showstopper for that blue. It's a Colorado blue spruce. It's going to add intense shades of blue, especially in the winter months, to your landscape. I love this plant. It's great in the container garden. It's also great in the ground. It's one that's going to be a smaller stature, around 3 to 4 feet tall, 3 to 4 feet wide, more in a small globe shape as well.
I could see it pairing really nicely with something a little bit more chartreuse, like an Aureum, or maybe if you wanted to stick with something that was more of a conifer, maybe a Moserai.
That'd be a great choice for the winter color. Now these are going to work zones 3 through 7, and again, great in the container. Remember that containers typically take them down one zone, cold hardiness wise, but they look great in the ground as well. They'll really show out and add a lot of color contrast in landscape. All right, what do we got next, Kate?
So this is an Akakamado Weeping, which another maple with some awesome history. I know that you guys visited the oldest one in Japan in 2018. I'd love to hear about that. It was
really cool. We've got a video coming out, if it isn't out already, with Nakata-san and his daughter. They were visiting from Japan. We've got some footage from that. You'll have to check out that video. We'll show you the original tree. Some rumors say it's up to 600 years old. We can confirm at least 400 years, so if there's some differences there, the stakes that are under that tree say 200 years old. It was a fun day. We were traveling in Japan. We were on Nippo Nikitai, and we were translating the brochure there at Nakata-san's nursery, and it said we're less than an hour and a half drive from the national treasure of Japan. So I'd heard through some friends at the National Arboretum it might be a Japanese maple. So I asked our translator. Nakata-san said, hey, if they're doing any, basically the TV show was like, no, we're not giving you a car because you'll get lost. Y'all are too crazy. You'll take off. We've paid for you to be here. But Nakata-san was like, hey, they're shooting B-roll on like Wednesday or Thursday. If it's raining, I'll take you guys and the translator out there. And it was the perfect day. We got out there in fall color, premium color on the thing in fall, and just walking up to a 400-year-old tree, you can't help but be in awe. It's like the tree's older than the United States. Like it's been older than the foundation of the United States. It's like you're standing next to a piece of history living right there. It's so cool. We love offering this one. It is a lush green. I always show that 400-year-old tree and say in 400 years it can look just like that. Typically more of a 5x6 in a 10-year period. So a low cascading habit. The growth rate is going to be very similar to that of something like Tsubukiyama.
That's amazing. It has beautiful fall color too. It's kind of that orangey red, maybe even a little yellow thrown in, but stunning. It has such a beautiful habit. If you stake it, you might get a little bit more of a weeping interest, but it also has those twisting, curling branches as it gets older. So really just a beauty, and you know, in 400 years it could be
right.
a treasure of the United States.
Well, people always say what's the max size this will get, and I always use that one as an example because, you know, they'll outlive us all. A healthy tree should live over 100 years old in perfect conditions like that in the Fukushima prefecture. That tree is over 400 years old, and it's just a sight to behold. It does get some really good twisting to the bark and some really good kind of differences there going on, making the structure of this one really funky. Heat tolerant, up zones 5 through 9, very heat tolerant, great one for the container. It's the great granddaddy of many like Ryusin, so you can stake this up to get a higher shape if you want right away. It's a little bit wider in its spread though than Ryusin. It's kind of the granddad to Ryusin, the father to Jiro Shidari, the great granddaddy of something like Golden Falls and Dragon Master. So there's so many cool things in this thing's lineage, but it all starts here with Akakamado Weeping.
Pick up a grandpappy today. Yeah, so up next we have this awesome Higasayama. It's also an older species of Japanese maple, so another cool piece of history. The name roughly means umbrella mountain, Higasayama mountain, but it has a really cool curling habit whenever the spring leaves first come out. And then it kind of has some of those really beautiful pink hues that it can get with a little bit of shade. So it's really an awesome maple.
It's a showstopper. Interesting plant. It's one my dad's been growing for a long time. This is Dad's 50th year of growing maples, and he's probably been growing Higasayama over 30-something years. It's a cool plant. You get that different style reticulation in the Ghost series, so it's got a weird reticulation to it. Like you alluded to, it's been around since the 1700s, so another classic Japanese maple. Tends to be a little bit columnar as it fills out too. It's not a columnar plant, but it doesn't put on a ton of width for an older one. That spring display of pink and white, though, is one of the most intense. I love it. Very popular in Japan for bonsai. You don't see a lot of people use this one in the US for bonsai. I have seen rooted cuttings work really well on this one before. These are all grafted, but it is a showstopper for color. Tends to grow over a foot of growth a year for us, so it is on that accelerated growth rate for a Japanese maple. Going to work zones 5 through 9. If you give Higasayama some late day shade, it will keep the spring color later into the season. But I'll tell you, this one's very heat tolerant. I've grown it in full sun with no leaf burn.
Yeah, it's always nice to find a more hardy plant, but that also is beautiful and has that showstopper quality to it. So it's always one of the funner things with shopping with Mr. Maple is you find something healthy, but also something really interesting too.
Love it. Grab you a Higasayama today. Classic from Japan. Returning today on the 10 at 10. All right, Kate, what do we got up next?
So here we have Hime Shojo. It's a really great dwarf maple. It has this multi-branching habit that's just so interesting and fun. It almost kind of reminds me of a squid sometimes when you look at it at the wind, because it's just like, wow! But it has a really bright, beautiful red color to it too, so it can play off really nicely with lots of plants in a landscape.
Compact dwarf, deep red. Sojo is another one of those words that typically refers to dark red shades. And Hime typically refers to princess, so kind of dark red princess here. Great for the container garden. I think it's the perfect pairing for things like Kiyohime, Murasaki Kiyohime, Kapersi dwarf. It's one of the true reds in that category. I will say you can manipulate the shape on this one a ton. If you just let it grow, it tends to grow a little bit more like Kiyohime, kind of a low round mound to it. But if you stake this one up, I've seen people stake up a 6-footer with a central leader of this and make it look extremely different. So you can play with the shapes on these. They tend to want to get wide and low, though, as a natural habitat to them. And an awesome plant for that dark red in the landscape. Holds this deep red very well, even in a shady condition.
And I think it's beautiful, too, how it transitions into that deep maroon color, because it does play off of just like the bright fall color that many other maples and deciduous trees have. So it's really a fun one to watch.
One of my favorite pairings with this is Kurohime. They both look great in a container. Next level plant for sure. I think you're going to love the small foliage on this one. Multi-stemmed approach to it naturally. And that new growth, even late summer, can kind of be a bright pink red. So like you were mentioning, kind of a contrast within itself, even extreme there. Works zones 5 through 9. Grab you a Hime Shojo for the container or the ground. All right, y'all, next up we've got Acer palmatum Ukigumo.
Yeah, so it has the name Floating Cloud, and it makes sense because every 2 to 3 years it has a really awesome white variegation that's just spectacular. It's kind of different from any other maple in that it can almost look somewhat like a ghost series, and then sometimes it also looks just like a splatter effect. It's really cool to see from tree to tree.
Floating Cloud. We should have put Fireball in here and just kept the whole Mario theme going. Floating Cloud is awesome. It's a cool plant. It's not consistent on the white. So some years it'll be bright white, some years it'll be green. It's a tree that's consistently a great looking plant and bold orange in the landscape. I have mine in a high oak canopy. I mentioned it with that Aureum. I get great color very consistently in that Ukigumo in the high oak canopy. Now, I often tell people what you want to do is leaf this out late. And people go, how do I do that? Do I have to control the weather? I can't control the weather. What does he mean, leaf it out late? What does that mean? Well, guys, low nitrogen fertilizers and a high shade canopy. That's the key for leafing a tree out late. Not a lot of fertilizer will not force the tree into an early breaking of dormancy. And then giving it plenty of shade is going to keep that root ball cool. And so you're going to leaf out slower and more consistency. So give it as much shade as possible. I think that's one of the tricks to the best color on Ukigumo.
That's really interesting, and it does have such a beautiful fall color. It's like a vibrant orange. It's almost like fire orange, so it's really stunning. And then it has these really interesting kind of claw-like habit to their leaves. So it's not, you know, a more traditional palmatum. It really has a beautiful curling effect at the end too that make it a standout maple. Great
growth on this one, typically around a foot of growth a year. Works zones 5 through 9. Definitely give it protection from the hot afternoon sun if you want to really peak those colors up. Some people can get by with this one in like the Pacific Northwest and sun. But most areas you're going to get the best color out of this one and a good bit of shade kind of slow consistency to it. And again, very low nitrogen. That's really one of the keys too. Too much nitrogen will green it up quicker. But some springs you're going to go out there and it's just going to blow you away because the whole thing's going to be glowing white. And when it does that, it's really one of the most popular maples in the landscape.
Yeah, it's stunning, and it's also just cool to, you know, have a bit of a mystery. Each spring you have something to look forward to, so that's a lot of fun too.
Ukigumo on the 10 at 10 today. All right, guys, next up we've got Acer Circinatum X Palmatum Ever Autumn.
So cool. It was a chance sport off of an Aureum, which is really interesting. But why that has such a particular name is that the leaves oftentimes have a bit of a red hue that's cast onto the green leaf. So it resembles a fall color. And, you know, it's perfect for the upcoming season. Regardless, you'll always be able to have a little bit of fall. But it just does have that beautiful serrated shape to the leaf that you think of, typically more with an Aureum style leaf. So it's very showy in its leaf habit.
Yeah, I love this. Shout out to Dan Himes at Terra Nova Nurseries. Good friend of ours. He was actually in a top 5 before too, so go check that out. Dan actually found Ever Autumn and named it, and it's so cool. It's aptly named, like you said, because you get some weird autumn colors even in the summer. I have a big one of these in Maplewood Gardens in my parents' garden, guys. It's probably 14 foot tall, 10 foot wide, beautiful specimen, gets a good bit of sun. It's actually a great grower here in the South, being an Acer Circinatum X. That palmatum part there is doing a lot of work, gives it a lot more durability. When it does get into fall color, it's quite spectacular too, at bold oranges and reds. I've had this really light up the show, but it really kind of gives you that malting effect, so it kind of feels like an early fall color even in the summer.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a fun transition to watch. And then also these were grafted off of the original tree, so that's also cool to know that you have another piece of Mr. Maple history.
Grabbing Ever Autumn today. So we'll be celebrating real autumn very soon here. It's right around the corner at Mr. Maple. Guys, we're going to have an open house, and gals, October 26th. That's going to be from 8 to 4. We'd love to see you here. It's going to be a fun time. A lot of our team will be here showing you around. It's always a great event, and we try to make it over the top every time for the Maples. So we'll try to make it a really fun day. People do line up at the gate, but they get in quickly. I think you'll enjoy being here. October 26th, right around the corner.
We're going to be sure and follow with y'all. So up next we have an awesome Kurenai Jishi, always a fun one to have on the 10 and 10. Its name is Red Lion, which makes a lot of sense because the new spring growth always has that really red scarlet hue that makes it a fun one to leaf out again.
This is a tree named by our late great friend Yana-san. A person found it, brought it to him. He didn't find the tree, but he did put the name on it. It's the mythological red Shishigashira. Fits into a lot of categories. I love pairing this with something like Angel the Prince because the leaf's different. Kind of reminds me more of Teroyama. Fits in a lot of Makawa collections too. I have this in my Makawa collection garden. I love this plant. The deep reds you get in the spring are awesome. Really, the fall is where it reminds me the most of Shishigashira. It already has that curling foliage, but you can get some Shishigashira-like color when it's blazing oranges, reds, and yellows all at the same time. Really reminiscent of Lion's Head.
Yeah, and so it's beautiful, versatile, but then also with the leaves, how they curl differently throughout the year. It's also fun to watch how it adapts, and just that's one of the funnest things that you can do with the maple, is just to see how it's impacted with the season. So this is a fun one for that.
Great small stature to this one, typically around 4 to 5 feet tall, even in 10 years. Excellent for the container garden. And if you grab that Japanese Princess, another great choice to put with it. Kurenai Jishi, I love the color patterns on this one. I have it in the ground, and it's a showstopper. I have it right behind my Shishigashira, and the two really contrast each other so well. I think it's just an amazing overall tree. I love the density to it, but I also love the kind of bubbly, round appearance that the foliage gives it. It's got a very elongated and serrated leaf to it with a curl to it. So it kind of gives it that Shishigashira-like vibes with that dark red spring color. Not uncommon this time of the year, though, for them to be a little bit greener before that fall color. So, guys, this is just 10 of the 20. There's another secret 10 trees. You're going to have to sign up for our email to see those other trees. There's actually 20 trees dropping a day at 10 a.m. And for the guy that says these aren't on the website, we know this is the preview video. They'll all be dropping at 10 a.m. Eastern.
Yeah, so take care.
God bless.
And have a great day.